Another angry white kid, just about kept away. Greta's going to be pissed.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Today is Infinite Plane Saturnday, and the usual opening track will be the closing, as we have to open with One-Eye Jack in the Shells, just a bowl cut away crisis actor for hire, because a number of these actors have been referenced in the latest news cycle. We're talking about Colt Gray. We'll be analyzing this story. Lots of interesting metascript clues, as you'll see. We're looking at this video where on Elvis's birthday, he takes an AR-15 and he shoots a deer, and he smears some of the blood on the right side of his face. And you just put these things together, and it kind of gets a little metascripty. So we'll get into that. We're going to talk about the fall of Donnie Darkened. I wanted to get to this yesterday, but didn't get around to it. I've often commented on Donnie Darkened. I was finding it very questionable how he was able to, as this anonymous avatar, spewing ChatGPT level biblical rhetoric, able to get on Tim Pool and talk about how Donald Trump is the Antichrist. Well, it turns out that behind Donnie Darkened is some big pro-Trump guy. So he's both pro-Trump and anti-Trump, making money on both sides. And it gets even weirder, because he's been photographed with Candace Owen, Donald Trump Jr., and then, of course, he's been on Tim Pool, who makes $100,000 a week for spewing Russian propaganda, but he didn't know about it. There's some plausible deniability there, I guess. We're also going to talk... This is also, by the way, this thing with Tim Pool and company is a continuation of what I described as the coming controlled demolition of the alt-right, and it's ongoing. We also have... Now, this isn't really news, but Loomer ate dog food on her live stream yesterday. Is anybody surprised? Put a 1 in the chat if you're not surprised that Loomer eats dog food. And she had this rationale for it. I just ate dog food. It's human grade, which means you and your dog can share a tasty, nutrient-dense treat together. So which is worse? If we had an informal poll, Diana Southard says 1. If we had a poll, let's just say a poll here. Which is worse, eating dog food for money because she's being paid, or taking money from Russia to the tune of $100K a week? Let's take a listen here.
Nutrients with your animals. So you could eat this yourself. And I'm going to show you, this isn't a gimmick. This is not just, you know, some trash dog food from China. Okay. These are supplements, and these are products that are so healthy and natural that you could actually eat it yourself. So you can see here, Positive Bison. It clearly says dog food topper.
Okay, so she's about to eat the dog food topper. Rocco says, I love not knowing some of the people and references, especially that you make about the world stage and its characters, world stage spelled with a WHIRLED. Hey, I envy you. I mean, I think it's great. When someone doesn't know who Laura Loomer is, it's like, okay, you don't have that thing looming in the background. But here we go. She's legitimately eating dog food. And if you use the code Loomer at pawsensitive.com, you get 15% off.
And I'm going to put this in my mouth right now.
I could have lived without ever having heard Laura Loomer utter that sentence. Let's play that one more time. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, so you can see here, positive bison. It clearly says dog food topper. And I'm going to put this in my mouth right now. So it tastes like meat. And maybe that is disgusting to you. But I'll show you right here. Look, this is the bison product right here. It clearly says dog food topper. You can see on camera.
Dirk says they soon want us to eat bugs, and people will. They are stupid. It will be poison, and they will say it's good for you. Yeah, this looks like she's being blackmailed. But I don't know. I mean, this isn't really off-brand. If there's anybody else, I'd be like, okay, this person is being leveraged in some way. But Laura Loomer eating dog food didn't even strike me as unusual. I'm just curious as to whether this is actually selling more dog treats on the basis you can share your food with your dog, which is not always advisable. There are some things dogs shouldn't eat. Okay, let's continue. I'm going through your... I'll see who's here in the chat. We're waiting for the room to fill up. There's about 61 people in there. Let's listen to Laura Loomer eat dog food for about 10 more seconds.
Actually tastes good. I'm not going to lie. So 100% human grade ingredients, nutrition for your dog in every bite. It's so healthy that you could even eat it yourself. The ingredients...
She goes on this rant about how if it's like the end of the world, you could survive off this, which is bizarre in itself. Like the world ended, and so you can prolong your misery a little bit if you can get into your dog food. I mean, this is a bizarre argument, but it's a selling point apparently.
Are healthy enough that, hey, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're hungry and you want a snack, you could just sit down at the park or open up your dog food from Positive, and you could share a snack with your dog. They also have other types.
She's also selling radiation protection kits like iodine and EMP stuff. She's all in for the end of the world, which is just how they fund their operations. Or it's a cover. Like maybe Alex Jones isn't really selling that much super male vitality. Maybe Tim Pool isn't selling his coffee brand, but maybe that's just a cover. So you just associate their income with products that they're supposedly selling, but it may just be a cover for where the money's actually coming from. All right, we're joined here by Ted Stryker says, see anything different in the sky today, Tim? No, haven't seen any chemtrails either. Still just a rumor. Dinah South says, happy Saturnday. Gorillas says, the rain sounds different in Scotland than in England. They have more nanobots in the rain in Scotland. No, now the new thing is nanobots are in the Coke and Pepsi. I think I played that last night. Joined by Rocco, Let's Go, Ren33, Reverse History says, aloha from the Ataraxian plane of existence on this gorgeous Saturnday. It's only a gorgeous day if you don't take all of the truther red pills too seriously, in which case you're afraid of Coca-Cola. You think Bill Gates is going to mind control you with it. Rens33 is in the chat. Jamitra101 says, Mason and Christian died at the shooting. Interesting names. Yeah, I thought so too, and we're going to go into that story. Because it's 100% fake until proven real. Everything we have seen has been indicative of it being a simulated event presented as real to the media, consumed by the naive public, as is always the case. Dirk Zink says, weird, Tim Pool's an idiot. Well, they're going to minimize it. Like, I see these moral equivalencies saying, well, everyone else receives money from Israel, and so what's the big deal? I don't know if that's an equivalency. I think it might be a little different. I have to look into it. But they're missing the point, that these are propagandists who aren't real free speech platforms. But we all knew this. I've already said, I don't follow anybody who's contained within the political horseshoe. That's ridiculous. We're outside. I think we're literally above it. Gorilla says, I support as much as I can. Well, every comment is support. Every idea, every puzzle piece you toss onto the table here. Lord Laney says, it's all peds and feds. Yeah, they're all compromised all the way. Linda Curtis says, lol, tastes like meat. Yeah, what would she have done if it didn't? Like, what if it just tasted like something foreign, something unpalatable? How would she have reacted? Because she did this live on the fly. And some of her coverage is interesting, but her takes are very world stage friendly. They don't go too deep. She's kind of like Candace Owen in that way, where they can talk about stuff like, yeah, NASA does satanic rituals, and the next day it's like no one talks about it. Michael Cervantes says it's like a John Waters film. Exactly. Exactly. John Waters was in the news recently. I've seen a couple of his movies, regrettably. But it's like trash fiction. What is that one where he has all these directors doing guerrilla films? Cecil B. Demented. Really demented stuff. But I do recall his early films. He was purportedly having people eat stuff on camera. Laura would have fit right in. Okay, Enslaved by Truth says, I took super male vitality once and it made me eat my neighbor's ass. Okay. Okay, let's continue. We're going through my notes here. I want to get into the fall of Donnie Darkened is an interesting story in itself. Anybody here know who Donnie Darkened is? You know, he's one of these individuals who did gematria predictions and would really hype up how Trump is the Antichrist. And then he started really preaching, getting really preachy, and I kind of accused him, and he blocked me for it, of using ChatGPT to create these speeches. But it turns out that this guy is some political operative, which is kind of strange. Why would a pro-Trump person be promoting this idea that Donald Trump is the Antichrist? And people have looked into his background. It turns out that Donnie Darkened has always had this penchant for running scams. He had this whole Facebook account called Welcome to my Facebook official real giveaway for today. And this is just in 2020. So you go to this link, you put some information in there, give him your credit card number, and maybe you'll receive a gift from him. Insane. But the right-wing griftosphere is apparently full of, that's why you can't trust anonymous people. I say don't trust any of these big Twitter accounts because you don't know what's behind them. And generally, you're being played. And most of the people who are positive and responsive towards them are bots. It's totally a scam. What's up? Oh, yeah, okay, cool. I'll open the phones here in a few minutes so you can call in about the Georgia event, because this is big. Let me go into what we came across here. First of all, you have this video of the shooter, Colt Gray, who idolized Lanza and Cruz. And they also mentioned that Audrey Hale wanted to make the Columbine shooters proud. So you have these characters in this fictional universe interacting with one another, influencing one another, plagiarizing each other's manifestos. Shout out to Brenton Tarrant, pretty much a ripoff of Anders Breivik, who kind of ripped off of the Unabomber, but they're all coming from the same office. The same guy writes all the manifestos for the FBI for all these fake patsies. So Georgia school shooter Colt Gray seen posing with an AR-15 and a bloodied face a year before Appalachia. Now, this was his first kill, and his dad was coaching him through it. The video is very distasteful, very hoaxy. This isn't realistic in any sense, in my view. But the key point here, this took place on Elvis's birthday. So that's interesting in and of itself. Elvis's birthday, and the blood smeared on the right side of the face, looking very Trumpy here. And of course, we have some Elvis connections to the Trump shooting. Interesting, we'll get to those. But let's go on here. This is the other part. So here's Colt Gray's hunting video. And you'll see at the end, they have the blood on his face. I think they pixelated it here. But this is just to show you what I'm talking about.
Hi, everyone. Mark Barden here at Sandy.
We have a Sandy Hooker ad
I'm
here.
Nella Dominici.
Speaking of them, has Alex Jones paid them the $1 billion yet? Because I'm looking at the story about how Shaquille O'Neal lost $20 million for saying the earth is flat. he lost a $20 million deal. Has Alex Jones paid $20 million for calling out the fake shooting? I don't think so. So it could be said, I suppose, that Shaquille O'Neal has lost more money due to Flat Earth than Alex Jones lost to auto-hoaxing that school shooting. But yes, he said he lost $20 million. Okay, here we go. Georgia school shooting, 14-year-old suspect and father both appear in court.
Now to the latest on that deadly school shooting in Georgia. The 14-year-old suspect and his father made their first court appearances this morning. His father now facing second-degree murder and other charges.
But I want to get to the video. It's kind of like a clip in the back here. They're hunting. They show blood on his face. But let me connect the rest of this too, because there's more here. So one, we have that connection. We have the, here we go, the Elvis birthday, 1/8. We have the blood on the cheeks. So there's two connections here that we're putting into this same conversation. Violet posted this. I've just read Colin Gray, father of Colt, was taken into custody at 6:11 p.m. and charged with giving his son the AR-15 style weapon. So 6:11, of course, has a specific connection to what? The exact time that Donald Trump was shot. So we have the blood on the cheek, 6:11, and then Elvis's birthday tied into this little package here. And then we have this. One of the constant, and they point this out, by the way, Colt's cheeks streaked with blood. So they point this out. This is one of their props. And then we have this. We've been often speaking about the connection between Robert De Niro and his various roles as predictive programming and foreshadowing for the Trump head wound. Mainly talking about Taxi Driver and its influence on John Hinckley, and Rosie O'Donnell called the shooting of Trump hinky, kind of interesting, but also Joker, where he gets shot, and Machete, and others, but also Deer Hunter. And a lot of the imagery for Deer Hunter has the gun to the side of the head. So again, Deer Hunter, Robert De Niro has been in this mix of symbolism, so it kind of makes sense to point this out considering the kid shot the deer and puts its blood on the side of his face. The movie's a war thriller from 1978, 3 hours, 3 minutes long. That's probably just a coincidence. And then one more thing. Colt. His name's Colt. Elvis gave Nixon the Colt 45. Elvis Presley arrived with a Colt 45. Imagine going to the White House with a Colt 45. I want to give this. Elvis Presley had arrived with a Colt 45 pistol in a display case with silver bullets to give to Nixon as a gift. Silver bullets. I didn't know about that part. I want to watch Agent Elvis. By the way, there's a cartoon about Elvis. I have to check it out. Okay, let me catch up on comments. Isabel Ann says Joker has a bloody face. Yep. Dirk Zink says, notice the name Colt 45. I knew they would pull this on Elvis's birthday. Yes, interesting. Renz33 says flat earth is expensive. Yeah, $20 million. Dinah Southard said, no money yet, but they shut down GNC Radio. Oh, GCN. Genesis Communications Network. Okay. Dirk says the Alex Jones thing is a farce. Yeah, obviously, he's on the other side. Alex Jones is the biggest, the most well-paid Sandy Hooker that there is. Like, he's actually on their side. It's obviously an inside job. We all know that here. Joe Fiore says, I live in Georgia, and yesterday I woke up and I checked my phone. The news about the school shooters already brought up on my phone in the Google browser. I don't know how it got there. Yeah, that's, and moreover, I mean, they already had like a memorial that day. And they had a line of children who already had their parents signing waivers so they could go on the news and talk about what they didn't see, making faces at the camera, because for them it's a huge payday. And I was looking at this one witness who did this sign of the cry. It's like they do this thing where they touch their eye, but it's dry, and suggested that she wanted to grow up and be a cop after seeing everything. And it's like, well, yeah, you see, you get paid to participate in drills that become propaganda films because you think you're doing a good deed. That's what we're looking at here. You should just consider every crisis actor, every participant is an activist on some level here. Like they must agree to do it. Or they agree with the overall picture. Like I happen to think that crisis acting is the new Hollywood. It's like a status symbol. It's a status symbol if you're a big name movie star, athlete, or musician, and you're able to chime in on the latest psyop. Like Ariana Grande's big with that Manchester bombing. Is that the one? You have all these celebrities. Tom Hanks was heavily associated with the 2020 thing. Inferno. You know, I saw that book today. I was going to pick it up at a thrift store. It's called Inferno by Dan Brown. And it's about the super virus that shuts down the world. The movie version stars Tom Hanks. And if you recall, Tom Hanks was the first person that we all knew who caught the virus. And he's in quarantine in Australia. Well, Inferno, a book about a super virus, begins where Tom Hanks' character in the Dan Brown movie is in a hospital in some kind of I think it's I have to look up the exact place. I think it's Italy, because Italy was the first place where they had lockdowns. But anyway, multiple connections between Tom Hanks, his real life at the beginning of the pandemic, and the Dan Brown book Inferno about the super virus. We haven't really gone back and talked a lot about Tom Hanks, but lately we've been focused on De Niro. But we need to make it a point, just as we study various directors, the so-called metascriptors, to also focus on actors. Like Margot Robbie is a very interesting one in the context of today's zeitgeist. Enslaved by Truth says De Niro, meaning black or dark. Interesting. Commenter says, most Americans are so entwined in the dream they don't know they're asleep. I dispute the first word in that sentence. It's all. It's pretty much all. I mean, we're so marginal. And when I'm saying that, there is a distinction here. There's a philosophical distinction. If we're talking about awake, what do we really mean here? I take it to mean psy-war aware. Truthers are aware of psyops. That's it. They recognize false flags here and there, but they don't see the big picture. And if you're not looking at this thing with a full awareness of psy-war and what that means, that it's worldview warfare, it's total, and it involves the insertion of hyperstitions into the collective delusion, our worldview that we all share, the televised one, the acceptable one. But if you can't recognize that that isn't the terrain, that the model they give us is heavily distorted, then you can't call yourself awake. You're still a cultist, and you're in a doomsday cult. And the closer you are to either fringe, left or right, the more brainwashed you are. Truthers are just as brainwashed as wokesters. Trutherville and Woketown are just a mirror image of one another. And that's by design. It's this antagonism that's being created. Okay, let's continue. I did hear some rumors, by the way, of a second shooter in this latest event with Colt Gray. But I think that the number of people who aren't fully entwined in the dream is just so marginal. You might as well just say all. Because what group can you say is awake? Outside of media skeptics and the programming class, those who are on the side of the stage where they know a little bit about the tricks, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about special effects, movie magic. A movie magic, I guess you could say, enhanced or augmented worldview. And this is what religions used to do. What they've done with media is they have replaced the role of religion in fomenting and creating these myths. Contemporary myths are all from the TV these days. But they can fabricate entire facets of your reality that you never directly experienced because you've accepted, if you're filtering your experiences through the screen predominantly, you've accepted this second-hand perception as normal. And it's really not. You should be meat-verse dominant, not metaverse dominant. They have people's head in the clouds by design. They have people caught up in this sea of irrelevance, as Huxley called it, where the truth is out there, the facts are there, but you could tell somebody, yeah, the news is sometimes reliable because, yeah, it does its job as media, but it at times will selectively replace fact with fiction, and they don't tell you when. Just like a good liar. A liar doesn't tell you, hey, I'm about to lie to you. For the next 5 minutes, I'm going to lie, And I'm going to reinforce this lie from here on out. They don't tell you. And the media tells the truth because it's necessary, it's just easier. But then when it's time to run a PSYOP, they just lie. That's how it works. Esteban says Jay Dyer's high def shows the squib in the video. Dirk says, Tim, I have to agree with you. Right and left are part of the divide and conquer. Yeah, and the people in the middle, the milquetoast, are even worse. I think they're the worst of all because there is no middle ground. You can't be on both sides. You have to be outside. Outside is the only legitimate place of the conscientious objector. If you're in the middle, you're still participating in the PSY war to some degree by lending it your belief because you still exist on that world stage. The off-world stage perspective is one that subtracts certain presuppositions. Like I can unequivocally say, I'm not afraid of nukes. I'm not afraid of bowl cut shooters or trans shooters. I'm not afraid of monkey plagues or anything else really. I'm not afraid of space junk Armageddon. Oh, speaking of space junk, the Starliner, the Boeing Starliner just landed here in New Mexico. And I think this is the first time they landed a capsule on the Earth instead of splashing it down on the water. But it's kind of interesting for a few reasons. But there's a spaceport down by White Sands where I've been to White Sands, New Mexico, a number of times when we had a machine gun range out there. They had Oryx out there. Dirk says, Tim, I know you watch movies like me for clues. Do you also watch the fake scripted sports shows? I try to watch as much as I can. And I'm aware that they're all part of the same unified field. It's monolithic. So I'm always interested to have people who are more knowledgeable about sports or video games or comics to chime in and send us links. Because this is such a big puzzle that one person couldn't possibly see it in one glance, much less assemble it. It does require all hands on deck here. Ted Stryker says, that's what I was referring to, Tim, the Starliner. Well, I slept with my space junk helmet on because I was afraid it was going to hit me. Because I believe the science. And if you believe the science, you should be worried about the threat of space junk. If you're not, why not? Like, what makes you so brave? But no, I was relieved to find that it didn't land anywhere nearby me. Diana says, can I attend the AutoHoax Con through an Android phone if I buy a ticket? I'm Android challenged. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can definitely attend. And AutoHoax Con is my main focus. I know we had a delay with the publication of the tabloid. I wasn't able to reach a minimum order for a 32-page tabloid, and I'm not willing to compromise on the size. I cut it back to 16 pages, 12 pages, just to test it, and I just thought, it's not worth it. Let's just wait a few weeks. Gorilla says, Tim, are you a catastrophist? No, I'm a catastrophe denialist. The world's not going to end. It goes on forever. It's time. It's not going to end. It's not going to end on Friday the 13th, April 2029, when Apophis 99942 planet killer hits us. It's not going to end from climate change in 2030. The world's never going to end. That's one of the biggest cons here. Like, forget about the shape of the world, where if they're lying about that, then they're hiding space. If they get you in the end times mindset, they're hiding time. And it seems like this control freak cult, probably from Saturn, is totally obsessed with control over time and space. Your time and your space. Don't move and stay here during these hours. Like lockdown culture. And I've been saying for years that video game culture is lockdown culture. That to prepare you for your future Mars-based task where you're going to be sitting in a bunker remotely terraforming while you're hoping the next generation has enough atmosphere to breathe, they're preparing you for it through video games where you're sitting down in a chair, comfortable, immersed in a virtual reality all day long, and you have astronaut food sent from above once in a while, dropped down into your basement from your mother. And by astronaut food, I mean like pizza pockets, stuff that you probably shouldn't eat, but you do because that's how you. And a lot of gamers, like hardcore gamers, wear diapers, and I hate to even say it, but it's true. So we're talking about future Martians, future astronaut training, And what are the content of these games? A lot of it's just space, flying around in space, landing on space balls. A lot of it's fighting the aliens, blowing up meteors. And if it's a game related to the Earth, it's usually like post-apocalypse, it's uninhabitable, Grand Theft Auto. So it's like, okay, why would you want to be here? So they make Mars into this ideal. We already have 100 comments. Okay, let me go ahead and open up phones. I think we've covered enough. I just wanted to bring up, this Colt Gray thing is obviously hoaxy, but the Colt name ties in with Trump, 45. We have the Elvis Presley connection there, just saying, giving Nixon the 45. Colt had blood on the right side of his face on Elvis's birthday after he shot a deer, connecting to Deer Hunter with Robert De Niro. And then his father was arrested at 6/11, which has a great deal of significance to the Trump shooting in particular, among other things. So all in all, very meta-scripty. We've talked about the fall of Donnie Darkened. Matt Lutchman, Donnie Darkened, has effectively scrubbed himself off the internet. He replaced himself on his website with an AI pseudonym and removed all his posts from his Facebook accounts and deleted his Lutchman report. So Donnie Darkened is gone. He flushed himself off the web. Fascinating. There's a documentary about it. I'll probably cover this a little bit more as it evolves, but it's an interesting story all around because it's one of the first times we've seen one of these shadowy, anonymous grifters being exposed and finding out that it's just some actor, some liar who's... And I've done something similar, by the way. I had been looking into this character called Bevy112, who's this liberal, Bernie-supporting, communist community college communications professor who actually gave a lecture on pronouns. So you know where they are politically. But then online, she pretends to be a conservative Christian who hates Hollywood and is insisting that every single celebrity is the opposite sex. She's a transvestigationist. But I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why would this person promote that? And I exposed this person. I found out who they were because their pets gave them away. So just a hint here. If you're going to be anonymous, keep your pets out of it because your pets will give you away at some point. Her cat did it. Sort of like if you have a home invasion, your cat's just going to watch. If that. They'll just go back to sleep. So her cat gave her away. And I'm like, okay, so this crazy cat lady is pretending to be this conspiracy theorist with a right-wing Christian perspective and has a huge following, like a huge cult. Yeah, Gorillas brings up Goldfinch. It'll be the same thing. When Goldfinch is doxxed, people are going to find out, wow, Q was an operation, a character that was LARPed by this New Zealand actor who played the Red Power Ranger. Like, things are just getting weirder. I was driving around today thinking that times are almost too interesting. Like, may you live in interesting times. Like, no, it's way too interesting. For those of us who are paying attention. Okay, let's see here. Going through your comments. Observing Reality says, old and busted, wearing diapers to confront your astronaut boyfriend, new hotness, wearing diapers and playing Xbox all day. Yeah, I'd have to see the meme, but I see where you're going with that. But you get my point. Training people to be sedentary, and along with that, you have these games that are filling you up with this dystopian vision of the future. Environmental catastrophe, post-nuke apocalypse, Borderland. So you have this future projection of how things are going to go if what? Why would things end up that way? Oh, because climate change. Because capitalism, because the West. So the underlying theme here is that the future is doomed if we don't change our course. So they're also programming every game player in a subconscious way from a worldview perspective to accept this as inevitable. So lockdown culture, whether it's for viruses or for fallout or for anything else, it's really part of the big program here. The decentralized FEMA camp, where everyone is their own prison warden. Okay, let's go through my notes. Phones are open if anyone wants to call in. We have a lot to say about this Colin. I say this Colt character, his father's Colin, Colt Gray, and he and his father are both being arrested. But strange connections here, by the way. The blood on the cheek, the deer hunter, the Colt 45, Elvis's birthday. Like, what is going on with that? The Tim Pool controversy, we'll probably talk about that a bit some more. This is kind of alarming. Apparently, Nick Fuentes is planning to procreate. And it's alarming considering his previous statements about age of consent and the purpose of women.
Dying species. So I got to go out and have some kids. We all got to go out and have some kids.
So consider this a PSA. Nick Fuentes is looking to replicate.
It's time to fuck, okay?
God, he's so disgusting. I apologize. But I'm only looking at this character because he is the face of America First. He was having dinner with Donald Trump and Ye, if you recall. And he represents a large swath of MAGA-minded people. And this America First cult is pretty gross all around. But now he's saying it's time to stop being incels. That's what he's getting at here. It's time to stop being incels. So they're bringing this to an end. And I'm like, wait, what does this mean here? Are they putting an end to this stunted emotional development? This incel culture? Are they, like I said, the controlled demolition of the alt-right? And it seems like they're telling all these little incels to grow up. And the message is getting put out there. So here's Nick Fuentes. Again, this is probably hopefully the last time we ever hear from him. Like, honestly, he needs to get off the internet, in my opinion. And I'm very online. And I know when I'm spending too much time online.
Hey, there are no rules. Listen. Now listen to this, okay? We are in a knife fight for the survival of the white race. There's no rules, okay?
Okay, that's enough of that. So let's move on. Linda Curtis says, oh, we're allowed to procreate again. Yeah, it's very culty in itself to tell your followers when they can have families and under what circumstances. Very culty. I'm not going to be sad to see MAGA ban go. Although, I kind of think the strategy was the deliberate creation of MAGA ban and then the destruction of MAGA ban. And what is MAGA ban? MAGA ban is the opposite of progressive utopianism that looks to an idealized past. It says, get off the grid, get your own land, have a bunch of kids, get out of public schools, don't vax, hate immigrants. It's this other package, this other worldview. It's an alternative. And they're both about quarantine. You'll notice left and right, they quarantine from one another. You have the moral panic versus the pandemic panic. And the ones who are terrified of pandemics are terrified of the other side because they don't believe in the cure. And those who believe in the moral panic and the traditional concepts of sin are terrified of the other side because they think the other side will take them to hell and get them judged if they don't get saved. So each side wants to, they simultaneously despise the other, but they also want to save the other because they have to save themselves, because one side is going to doom us all to climate catastrophe and the other side is going to doom us all to judgment from God. Phone number's on the screen. It's 505-510-4226. Okay, if you want to call back, it looks like a gremlin swatted that one. But yeah, phones are open. Just 505-510-4226. Seba says, seems no one can escape the bird with two wings. Right. Yeah, it's myopic. It's a narrow view. And it's not all inclusive. You see, because what we're doing is we're taking a step back. Like, we're socially distancing from the screen. Everyone else, just the way to conceptualize it is the normal person has their nose pressed up against the screen for their entire life. The conspiracy theorist has their head through the screen, whereas the skeptic is 6 feet away from it. And if you step back from the screen and you recognize, okay, everything on that screen is augmented by special interests with special effects. Every aspect of it. And this is just a fact. And if you can't acknowledge it, you're naive. People lie. Governments lie. Media lies. Religions lie. That's just the way of the world. I call it the lie world order. And it's not being cynical. it's having situational awareness. And once you're aware of how they lie and the structure of media itself, it ceases to have an effect on you. In fact, it frees a lot of bandwidth, because I'm not worried about doomsdays, getting off the grid, aliens, 5G towers, nanobots in my Pepsi. None of that stuff keeps me up at night. And that frees up a lot of energy, bandwidth, time to focus on more important things. Which is why we're about to release this tabloid and why we're starting this series of cyber symposiums, because we're kind of ground zero for what you could consider to be an emerging third branch of media. You have mainstream and alt in the box, but there's no platform for those who aren't confined. So what is that platform that we're on? It's called the parallel media. You can go off the grid physically, go out into the mountains with your storable food items and all this stuff, and your AR-15s, and you can feel somewhat secure, but you're still paranoid because you've been terrorized by the lying media. So you're not really off the grid. There's nothing off the grid about running from an imaginary hyperstitious construct. It's actually insanity. But I can honestly say I am off the grid. And I can't even afford to go camping right now. I'm really focused on my work. I can't just go take a vacation. But I don't need to be physically away from like the nearest 5G. I don't have to be away from the grid itself physically to be free from it. I have no trace of paranoia. I'm not triggerable by the media. Observing Reality says, if Fuentes wasn't so clueless about politics, he could achieve more for himself and the Groypers. I disagree. I think he's politically astute, but he's also a world stager. You know, he's definitely in the box. He's controlled opposition. If he wasn't a Fed, he would have been arrested for January 6th and his role in it. He was actually on video calling for people to run into the Capitol. He should have been locked up in a cell with the QAnon shaman. But we know none of them actually spent time in jail. It was all a ruse. Now, Fuentes could have a future as a comedian. He is kind of funny in his own way. But I don't know. Okay, let's continue. 'Cause I think he's a parody of extremism. And you'd have to be a comedian to deliver some of his lines. Like, there's no way he's legitimately a believer in any of these things. He promotes Agenda 2025. If implemented, it would have his family deported. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Hey, what's up?
This is Jurassic.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to get your take on this Colt Gray nonsense.
Yeah, well, just one thing before I start. Every time you say that I'm going to start taking calls right now, it's like 20 minutes after you say it that you actually turn on the phone. But anyway,
thanks. I'll keep
I
that
just
in
want
mind.
people to know that. I just want people to know that it's not like I'm not trying to call. Anyway, so go ahead if you want to start, and then I'll jump in when you want to.
Okay, the main thing I picked up on is they had 4 deaths, is what they said, and it happened on 9/4. So we're like, okay, 4 deaths, and I was looking at the numbers, and it seems like they kept saying 4 dead, 9 injured, but the numbers went up. But anyway,
well,
the main thing about it, I think, was the blood on the cheek was the thing I called up today. But what have you found?
No, well, let me just say this: the connection that you made with the blood on the cheek and the connection to Trump is a great connection. I didn't even think of that, and also, don't forget he's got blonde hair like Trump too. And you saw the courtroom blonde hair.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got that gold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
much. It's very Trumpian.
Yeah. But here's the big connection. You know that I know you. Look, unless you know my videos, you're not going to understand. But the whole 9/4, 9/5 connection, which is the date it was 9/4, but because it was a leap year, it landed on the 9/5 day. My whole videos are about 9/4, 9/5 because that's when I was born, 9/4, but it landed on 9/5 because I was born on a leap year. But putting all that aside, this is what it's all about, because MLK was killed on 4/4, which is the 94, 95 day of the year on a leap year. And it was a leap year when he was killed, okay? And MLK was 95 years old this year, okay? He would have been if he was supposedly alive, right? And MLK is named after King County. Martin Luther King is named after the King County in Washington State. And you know, the place that the shooting happened was in Georgia, which also connects to MLK. MLK was born in Atlanta, Georgia, but the fact that it's George connected to George Washington, you know what I'm saying? So that's the first connection, the George connection, and
Yeah.
then you
George,
had the fact that,
and really
go
quick,
ahead.
because your last call we talked about this. There's a lot of connections with the Georgia Guidestones, their destruction, and Elvis, the hospital where Elvis was born. So there's just a lot there with the George. So Georgia is a huge clue. And happy belated birthday, by the way.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, and the Georgia Guidestones, obviously, which came down 42 years after it was erected, and Elvis was died at the age of 42. Washington's the 42nd state. It's all one big, huge Elvis ritual, okay? And MLK was killed in Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis lived and died in Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis is known as the King. Seattle's in King County. Martin Luther King is known as the King also. So the King had the King whacked in his hometown. Elvis lived and died in Memphis. But anyway, so this shooting happened with the connection with George, connected to Washington and Georgia. And then it happened on 9/4. And they said that 4 people killed, 9 injured, which is 9/4, same thing. And then what's the address, Tim? Did you see the address?
No, what's the address?
Well, you want to look it up?
Yeah.
Appalachia High?
Yeah.
Look at the address.
Okay, here we go. Oh, and this one has just been a perfect example. Oh, okay, 9/4 Hammond. Hold on a second here. I'm still looking for it. This has been a great example of actors. If you've never seen these actors on TV, these crisis thespians, this is a great study. Okay, 940 Heyman Morris Road, Winder Barrow County. Okay.
Yeah, and 9/4 is the 0 is a crown. I've always told you guys that. The O is the crown. So anytime you see the letter O, it's a crown. The 0 is a crown. The 0 to the hero connection. But anyway, so 940, it's the same thing.
So 9/4,
anyway,
9/4. And yeah, in the
Yeah.
initial reports, I kept seeing it was like 9 injured, 4 dead. And so that's kind of what made me think, okay, this is looking very hoaxy. But of course, those numbers change throughout the day. But yeah, look, 4 dead, 9 injured. These were all the initial reports, 4949. And I'm like, okay, 49 and a 49. And now we're finding out, yeah, it's 9/4 Heyman.
And yeah, and here's another connection, like you said, which I mentioned, the Colt 45 connection with Elvis and Nixon, and the fact that his name was Colt. So gun equals 42. So there's another connection to the whole puzzle. The word gun equals 42. Just add up the letters GUN in the alphabet, whatever it is in the alphabet, and so that connects to Elvis dying at 42, Washington being the 42nd state. So his name is Colt. Elvis gave the Colt 45 to Nixon. President Trump is the 45th president who's going to get the head wound. And his name is Colt. And the word Colt equals exactly the word June in gematria. Every number is the same. So Colt equals June. And how old was he? 14. So what does that mean?
June 14th.
June is Colt. June 14th. That's Trump's birthday.
Interesting. And
so yeah.
and as we had pointed out, Colt's father, Colin Gray, was arrested at 6:11 p.m., the exact time Trump was shot.
Well, that's a great catch again. See, that's what I'm saying. I didn't even get that one until I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, Violent Pengon in our Discord hit that one. And this all does connect to this Robert De Niro theme because, you know, he was Travis Bickle, the assassin in Taxi Driver that inspired Hinkle to do the Hinky event or the shooting of Reagan. And, of course, if you look at The Deer Hunter with Robert De Niro, he constantly has a gun to his head in all the imagery. And here we have the kid, after having shot a deer, smearing blood on the right side of his head. It's all very well connected here.
Well, and also it connects to the Buckeye State. That's where he gets his head wound.
Right, right. That was the significance of the deer, the reference to the Buckeye State. And yes, so we're looking here at, and you mentioned the other day, Rosie O'Donnell happened to just call the Trump shooting hinky, a word that we had to look up, and it basically means hoaxy, but it's way too proximate to Hinckley to have been a randomly chosen word. And that just puts it all together, that it still ties into this general theme of Rosie O'Donnell, Donald rising after a shot. So it's all part of this bigger script for sure.
Yeah, and just a couple more things, and also connecting to Washington, because Washington is the Apple State, right?
Right.
And what is the name of the high school? Appalachia. Sounds like apple, you know.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and it's a big A, which you've seen me connect the big A to everything, right? What is the big A?
The big A makes the Space Needle, and yeah,
right.
I looked at this video by Game Time Woo, and he zoomed in on the school's front sign, this big A against a brick background. Of course, bricks are generally symbolic of masonry.
Yeah, and just like I told you that baseball pitcher with the number 45 who died, Skaggs, he was wearing the number 45. They were calling him a fallen angel. And the big A is right outside the stadium of the Angel Stadium. Is the big A? It looks just like the Space Needle, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And the Space Needle is a very, as a symbol, it's as significant, if not more so, than the Twin Towers were. It's just been this reoccurring symbol, and we haven't even seen its full import yet. But it's definitely connected to the nuke, to EMPs, and a few other things, but mainly the ground zero that happens when you have a mushroom cloud, also ground zero pandemic. But yeah, very important key symbol.
Here's another one here. You know the Seattle area codes? Let me just tell you real quick. The original area code was 206 for Seattle. They added 564 just in the last couple of years, 2 years, I think. 564 plus 206. If you add that up, it's 770, which makes 770. And Elvis died in the year 77. And I told you everything's about the crown. So 77 with a crown is 770. And what is Winder area code? 770, right? That's where the Georgia event happened.
Right. Yeah, the 77 code is pretty interesting. Like the Georgia Guidestones GG77. We picked up some stuff with the Pentagon. Its construction starts on 9/11, but it's like 77 feet high, hit by Flight 77 after a 77-minute flight. Like it's all script, obviously, but that number is significant. Also, I think the company that built the Space Needle is called the Pentagram Corporation.
Yeah, I revealed that years ago. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, if you can't see what's happening, because what's important about the Space Needle is also that it equals the word fallen angel. So basically, it's telling you what it represents. You know, that structure. So Space Needle equals fallen angel, and it's made by the Pentagram Corp. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and there were
can't make this stuff up.
Seattle investors created the Pentagram Corporation. So you have 5 people associating themselves. Were they all standing in a circle with a star, and they're each on a point? Like there is something kind of vaguely satanic about this, or ritualistic.
It's beyond ridiculous, man.
But no, but this is great information so far, because this stuff about 4994.
Oh, and don't forget the 49ers guy just got shot a couple of days before.
Oh, really? Okay, 49ers. Okay, there's
football player got shot.
Ooh, teen arraigned in attempted murder of rookie Ricky Pearsall.
Has almost like the Presley, the first 4. You know,
it's anagram.
Like
it's a Presley anagram. Yes, 49ers rookie Ricky Pearsall. Okay, so 49ers team member shot. Fascinating.
And you know where the 49ers play? At Levi's Stadium. Elvis. Levi's is Elvis. You know?
Nice. And of course.
Well,
I was going to say that the quarterback was compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. during the last Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, and BP gets you 216, and of course the name Brock is Barack, and you've associated Barack Obama with this head wound drama from the beginning.
Yeah, and just like you always say, when Trump got shot at what was it, the city and state?
Butler, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah, BP. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And by the way, Appalachia High, the initials AH, 1-8. That's Elvis's birthday, AH.
Okay, Elvis's birthday, and then 1-8 is the day he shot the deer and smeared the blood on the right side of his face.
That's a great catch. I did not know that. I didn't even check that one. And interestingly enough, this place is in a county. Well, how would you pronounce this if you saw this spelled? Barrow.
Barrow?
Oh, well, I would say Borrow. But
Barrow, yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds like my name. My name is Garrow, right? So I was like, this was in the county of Barrow, and that was on my birthday, this stupid thing. But here's another thing.
Not the first time that you've had some kind of weird event occurring alongside your birthday, is it?
No. Yeah, you're right. Definitely. Well, 9/11, between Elvis's birthday and 9/11 is 9 months, 4 days. I mean, I'm sorry. It's 247 days, which is my birthday, 248 days a year. Yeah.
Fascinating.
But there's other connections, but one of the injured was named Phoenix. Did you see that?
Oh, I did see that. Okay, so the names of the injured at Appalachia. Let me pull this up, because we had a Christian, a Mason, and there was I think it was a Phoenix.
No, that was one of the injured. You're talking about the dead. Yeah, the ones you just named were dead.
Okay, but I saw that name pop up, so there was a Phoenix in here.
Yeah. There was a guy named David Phoenix who was injured.
Well, that's a reoccurring theme as well with these high-profile school shooting events. Like with Uvalde, their school slogan was something like, "We will rise together," and their slogan was up against this brick wall, but it was this constant refrain of they're going to burn it down and rebuild it. This Phoenix theme, and they even said we're going to rise like a phoenix. If you look up Uvalde, they talked about that, and this is all coded language. But so yeah, I'm not surprised that they would throw that out there again.
Anyway, bro, all right, man, great puzzle piece putting together, man. Keep going. I'll let you go.
Awesome. Appreciate the call. Have a great day. All right, everyone, that's Garrow. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Isabel says, what's Garrow's opinion on astrology? I'll have to ask him next time. And next time I'll answer my phone earlier. Commenter says 7 times 7 is 49. Another connection there. And these aren't meaningless connections. You know, I often talk about the gematria people and their nonsensical connections. But that's not to say that this isn't used, that this isn't a part of the coded language of these events. And all we're doing is deciphering. We're deciphering and I would say interpreting based on context. That's really what it comes down to. It's context. Okay, Dirk says, it seems like Garrow's the Keanu Reeves character in The Matrix. Okay, Diana says, I have some hearing loss. When Tim uses this mic, I hear much better using a Bluetooth. Yeah, one day I'll get the ultimate mic. There's been this covert sabotage on everybody. Skype used to be louder, and they used to have an option to turn off the ringer, and they got rid of that. They've degraded things on purpose, I think, with intention. All right, so to recap, shooter kills a deer on Elvis's birthday, smears the blood on the side of his face. The AH, the initials for the school, the 1-8 Elvis connections are significant here for a few reasons. If you recall, after Trump was shot, he disappeared, and you didn't see him again until he showed up at the RNC. And when he showed up at the RNC, it was against the backdrop that was an exact replica of Elvis Presley's comeback special. with the name Elvis was behind him, but they had the name Trump behind him in big letters. And so he shows up with the earpiece on, the bandage on his ear. But that is a deliberate reference to Elvis. And so this is just a recurring theme that we've been noting here. But another aspect of this, of course, is the Robert De Niro connections, which we just talked about. Unfortunately, I mentioned Nick Fuentes, but we're done with that. Oh, one more thing. The arrest of Colin Gray, father of Colt, at 6'11". 6'11", very much not a coincidence there either. I'm monitoring the fall of the right wing, or the alt-right grifting sphere. Like Donnie Darkin falling down, Donnie Darkin being humiliated and deleting everything. That's a pretty big deal. I hope to see more. Okay, so here we have survivor of the school shooting recounts moments that the teacher was shot. So I've been looking through these various reports, and it's always the same. I'm just gonna play a few seconds here. It's predictable. That's how bad it is.
There's someone here with a gun. And
they all do this.
There's someone here with a gun, and I just want to tell you I love you.
The eye scratch thing. Old trick, not even convincing. I have some ideas on how to make it more convincing and believable, but I'm not going to give them any hints. Now, some people are noticing how the Boeing Starliner, as it was detaching, it seemed to be in the same frame as some UFOs in the background. So let me go ahead and play this clip.
The vehicle is now about 2 meters away from the International Space Station. At the time of undocking, Starliner and the International Space Station were flying approximately 260 statute miles over central China.
Now, a couple things to point out here. One, the way that it's lit, you'll notice the hot spots where the light is on it. That light is from the sun, supposedly. What's more, it's fuzzy. You lose detail. And the further away it goes from the camera, the more it disappears into the darkness. And it disappears at less than 50 feet away. It just goes into the dark. The light diffuses. Now, this doesn't happen with most space photography. With most space photography, you can see the Earth from the space station. You can see your house. You can see detail. So why is it, when you're looking at spacewalks or docking of various capsules, why do you have this loss of light? Well, the answer is light loss. You see the same thing with scuba divers. When you're underwater, the light diffuses, and it is impossible to see something after a certain distance at the same distance you would see if you were in, let's say, outer space or on the ground, in the air. So this is an example of how you can show people, yeah, they're doing this stuff underwater. They're just simulating it. It's a simulation. But now, look at the comments here. Looks like UFOs, and NASA has just live streamed them. It says, interesting, how often is NASA live streaming stuff like this? Now, these are Redditors, and people on Reddit are pretty much mainstreamers. The space station says hundreds of times. They're all talking about this. They usually cut the feed when good stuff happens. I just saw something at 8 minutes and 20 seconds. At 1 minute and 8 seconds, similar place, opposite direction. So if you go to the point in the video that they're referring to, you're seeing what we know to be, because we're aware of what I called special effects. We know that they're doing this underwater. And so you see bubbles. Occasionally you see bubbles. There's one.
And you can see those thrusters firing there on the left of your screen as Starliner backs away from space station.
And we are now just at 35.
So a number of people are noticing bubbles in space, but they're told that these are UFOs. That's their explanation. And they always fall for it. You have entire YouTube channels dedicated to watching the ISS and looking at bubbles and calling them motherships and flying saucers. And there's one video that had I think it was a SpaceX resupply module attaching itself to the ISS, and I'm pretty sure I saw a squid in the background. I could dig it up because some live streamer reported it as a dragon in space. He said, you could, if you look for it, I might look for it. He reported that he was seeing a dragon in space, and I thought, well, if it's in space, it wouldn't be flapping its wings. It would be pointless. But I do recall months earlier, SpaceX had said something about how they were sending baby octopuses into space. So I thought, well, maybe they actually have some squids. Yeah, NASA's sending squids into space for research. SpaceX will launch a baby squid, bobtail squid, water bears, to the orbital outpost. So they have been sending squids into space, but someone had actually found a video that they claimed was a dragon, but I looked at this so-called dragon, and I did see it in the background, but it looked like a squid. And if you look at the way squids swim, it has this flapping effect, but it was really far in the back. And I thought, what is that, a bat, a dragon, a squid? Regardless, it's underwater. So there might actually be squids swimming around the space station model that they pretend is real. Angst G says, I wonder if the announcer lady knows how fake this stuff is or if she's a true believer. Well, the answer to that, true believer, I think it was the mission director for Apollo 11 in his biography said that even in the 60s, the simulations were so realistic that the people on the ground would have no way of knowing whether they were dealing with a simulated flight or the real thing. It was indistinguishable back in the 60s. So it's safe to say that NASA is highly compartmentalized, and every person there, up except for the very top, is part of the programmed class. And that's an important distinction. I describe how the masses are programmed, and then you have the programmers. But the programmers are mostly still in the box by necessity. They would only be let in on the secrets on a need-to-know basis. Commenter says, anybody heard about Project A119? Yeah, nuke the moon. Before the moon landing, NASA talked about dropping an atom bomb on the moon to, as a flex to win the space race. And it combines a couple of things. A11119. Apollo 11, of course, but 119, 9/11 backward. We talked about this before. Kubrick directed 9/11 and Apollo 11. Look at The Shining, just as one reference, but 119 is a reference to Genesis. 11:9, Tower of Babel falling, Moonfall, that movie. We talked about this body of symbolism showing the space infrastructure falling, being consistently associated with 119, which is just the inverse 9/11. So we've been looking at this Nuke the Moon Project A119 for some time. I'm going to pull this up on Wiki. Also want to point out that Bezos launched himself into space on the anniversary of Apollo 11 at 9:11 a.m. Okay, Project A119 was a top secret plan developed in 1958 by the Air Force to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon. Why? A show of force. A boost in domestic morale in the capabilities of the United States, which was needed after the Soviet Union took an early lead in the space race. This was in 1958. The space race was won on 10/4/57. Russia put Sputnik into orbit. And 10/4 is the date that Joker 2 is coming out, by the way. But yes, they did have a plan to nuke the moon for morale and to show Russia who's boss. It was to counteract the Sputnik crisis. Sputnik was the first artificial satellite in orbit around the Earth. Now, just to be clear, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I don't believe in nukes. I don't believe that the moon is nukeable. But I do believe that they put up this plan, and the people who planned it probably believed it to be 100% doable and a good idea. Okay, let's see. Commenter says there is substantial evidence the moon is in fact artificial, likely hollow, made out of titanium brass like alloy. Busy56 says, what's the evidence for that? You know, the evidence would only support the claim that the moon is made out of wood. Evidence being petrified rocks presented to the government of Holland as legitimate moon rocks. Moon rock in museum is just petrified wood. It was received as a private gift to the Prime Minister October 9th, 1969. Yep. An expert saw the rock and he said this is petrified wood. So if you just want to go off of evidence, if that's your standard, and I'm all about the evidence as being the standard, I think it's safe to say, weirdly, that the moon is made out of wood. How else could you possibly explain this? You can't. Let me play a clip from NPR, just in case you don't trust IPR. Okay, this is moon rock is really just petrified.
Vinsky, a prized possession in the Dutch National Museum is not what the curators thought. Back in 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts visited the Netherlands, and the U.S. ambassador gave the Dutch Prime Minister what he said was a moon rock. No doubt it gave a warm feeling to the U.S. ally. But when an expert saw it in the National Museum, he said he wasn't so sure it was real. Geologists have now identified the moon rock as petrified wood. It's Morning Edition.
All right, so there you have it. What's your evidence that the moon is made out of titanium and brass like alloys? My evidence is NPR and the petrified wood. Angst G says, in post-World War II era, they repeatedly tested out high-altitude nuclear blasts, allegedly. And I always thought that was to create an EMP. Yeah, absolutely. The higher the altitude, the wider the range of the electromagnetic pulse. And then fallout. The fallout distributed up in the higher altitudes would spread further and create... Like, let's say they faked a nuke over Seattle. All they would have to say is it's an EMP, that's why there's a blackout. And it's not a coincidence that next to the Seattle Space Needle, there's this thing called the EMP. Well, now it's called the Museum of Pop Culture, but it used to be called the Experience Music Project. And so you have the EMP adjacent to the Space Needle, and there's a statue of Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, who's associated with a mysterious death, but also the song Black Hole Sun, which is disturbing, but it may tie into this bigger theme here. But the EMP associated with the nuke, and lately we've been noticing the symbolism, like the Ghostbusters movie, Frozen Empire, King Kong versus Godzilla, the new Empire. Empire beginning with EMP has been this reoccurring clue to what comes next after they sink this empire. The Megaopolis movie opens up with the space junk falling, the Russian satellite, which coincidentally happened in real life the same day. This trailer comes out. You have the story in the news about the NASA astronauts taking cover because an exploded Russian satellite. So Megaopolis, begins with this theme of an empire dying. The ISS movie has Russia nuking America. So there's this theme building up, tying into EMP. But I would suggest that it would be easier to fake it than to fake something on the ground. And then you would have an excuse to lock everybody down because of the fallout. Which is why the brother of Christopher Nolan, who did Oppenheimer, did Fallout. Jonathan Nolan did Fallout. Fallout wasn't just for your entertainment. It's for your entrainment, to entrain your mind to future news cycles. And it was a PSA to teach you about radioactive fallout so you know how to respond, you know how to be scared appropriately. These movies aren't released for any other purpose than preparing your mind for what they're going to do next. HG says that the EMPs due to high altitude blast never happened, or Bullocks. I don't know what your evidence is, and so my evidence is really as limited as yours would likely be. I was a 54 Bravo, my first MOS, which is nuclear biological chemical decontamination specialist, and for all I know, it could all be fake. My training was 6 months of decontamination training on the presupposition these things existed. Fallout, chemical waste, biological agents, and our education on the matter of the blast had to do with the effects of high altitude, how big it is, how widespread the EMP would be, and how to protect against it. But we just saw a bunch of movies. We saw them blowing up Barbie doll houses. We were taught that you face the blast, drop on the ground, and, supposedly, of course, the blast is like 18 inches above the ground. You might survive. But we didn't have anything tangible. Nothing really. And in my view, the nuke is a God construct. It's Godzilla. It's something to terrify the populations with. That's ultimately what it is. There are so many God constructs that the atheists believe in. That's why I call the dominant scientific worldview, scientism, rather. It's a scientism-infused worldview, but I call it the religion of nasatology. Just because you don't have a traditional religion, just because you're a godless atheist, doesn't mean you're truly an atheist. It's a misnomer. You're not an atheist if you have accepted any number of God constructs. Do you believe in Gaia? The wrath of Gaia? Climate change? Do you believe in the atomic bomb? These are God constructs. Do you believe in this flood myth where if you don't recycle and pay your carbon taxes, the ocean levels are going to rise? These are myths. So the atheist today is a nasatologist, and it's an updated version of all these other religions. In fact, it's a Frankenstein. It's syncretism run amok. It's religious syncretism mixed with science fiction. And when you look back at the Russian rocket pioneers, way before Apollo 11, but when they were just theorizing stuff about space and man's future evolution being multiplanetary, Musk got his idea of humans becoming a multiplanetary species from the Russian rocket pioneers, rocket scientists, who were all believers in cosmism, heavily influenced by theosophy. So there's this. So what I'm saying is that outer space has always been a reinvention of heaven, of the old concepts of a celestial realm. It's never been a location that you're going to go. You're not going to Mars. The Mars base is just a model in your mind where they can create this utopian vision that you will want to adopt here on Earth. In fact, the book Red Star, I think it's 1909. Red Star is about Mars. This book describes 1908. It's a Russian science fiction novel from 1908 about a perfect society on Mars, a communist society, and these Earth scientists go out there and they see it, and they say, hey, it's so good up here, we have to implement this here on Earth. This is the way to live. And moreover, I found some stuff up here suggesting that they felt like it was incumbent upon them to redefine all the old religions within this new scientific paradigm and finding scientific replacements for religious concepts and ideas. For example, aliens. Aliens are a science fiction version of angels. They're totally fake. It's just a replacement for people who don't believe in God. They don't believe in God. They laugh at the idea of angels and demons, but they believe in aliens. And they even entertain the idea that some of these aliens might be interdimensional or maybe even malevolent. Basically demons. HLG says the moon is made up of 33 different kinds of wood. The evidence is located on the dark side. Commenter asks, what if we are God? I don't have any real solid evidence of that, although I do talk to some people who believe in this idea that we're somehow, and I kind of entertain the idea, that there is some kind of a co-creative element inherent in our existence. Like, I reject the idea that we are evolved apes with big egos on a rock floating through a dead universe that's eventually going to collapse on itself. So we're basically accidents, and that our self-concept is just chemicals. Cope. Yeah, the reason why we think of spiritual things and infinite life or eternal life beyond the physical death is we're just coping. We're coping with the meaninglessness of it all. Like, I kind of reject that. And my experience with synchronicity and others and their experiences with it, I'm convinced that synchronicity is a thing. It's not a misfiring. It's not apophenia. A precognition, intuition. These are things that can't be explained by going by the conventional model that scientism would have you believe. You would have to just throw these things out, which I don't. So it leads me to think that there may be some kind of explanation for this that lies in the interface between our experience and our thoughts. Like our imagination, for example. Like, what is its real function? And I've been thinking, well, maybe the imagination, where we blueprint the future, where we select from the infinite realm of possibilities, maybe it's some kind of, maybe it's an interface that exists in the future, the yet to manifest. In other words, maybe the universe doesn't exist until we experience it. That it's just this field of potentiality, that it's not a static, dead universe grinding to a halt, but that it's perceived as it's created, and that we're somehow involved in the process on a small scale. Which means it would explain synchronicity, coincidence, probability manipulation, what people would call, I guess, magic. Let's see here. Slick Rick says, I believe the possibility the moon's a hologram. Just a thought. I have a few issues with that one. The lunar wave is not good evidence for a few reasons. That can be explained away by wingtip vortices. But the moon being a hologram, like a non-material object, how do you explain the eclipse? You know, how does it block the sun? Interesting questions, though. Busy56 says, there's an article in the New York Times called Inside the Trump-Harris Debate Prep, Method Acting Insults, Tough Questions. It talks about Kamala preparing with a method actor playing Trump. What a cringe fest. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm curious to see if they're going to have a fly land on Trump's or Kamala's face. They always do that. You notice they've done this, like Obama's face. They've had these flies showing up during these debates. I think there was one in Mitt Romney's hair. You all know what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can pull this up. And it was during the debate. And I remember at the time thinking that they must be testing out some kind of augmented virtual reality, like real time, to show that they can do it. That during a live debate on national television, you could insert a fly. Here we go. On Pence's face. It was on Pence's face. A fly on Vice President Pence, captured on Wednesday during the debate. Let me pull this up. I think we've all seen this. I have to log in. Forget about that. Zuckerberg has locked me out of Facebook. I have to change my password every time I go in. But the fly being inserted during a live event, that's why they're not reacting to it. It's totally possible. So when I talk about being Psy-War aware, Psy-F aware, being aware of the special effects, that's part of it. You have to understand how deep fakes work, how deep faked we already are, and how fakeable events are on TV. Enslaved by Truth says they already did it with Trump with the mosquito. They also did it with Mousegate. Do you remember the mouse on the outside of the rocket? Okay, let's see. Commenter says, Pompeo says we're in on a live exercise. Yeah, I think that's out of context. There's this quote that the QAnoners, who are high on hopium, throw around. That, oh, it was a live exercise and Pompeo knew, and Trump said, it'd be nice if they told me. Like, when he said that, people took it to mean that he didn't know they were running a big event. Which means that he's totally a dupe. Totally helpless. But I don't know. I'm so done with 2020. We've established what it actually was and what it accomplished, and we're about to live through the effects of it. The purpose of the pandemic was to educate the public about mind viruses and the need to quarantine the internet from disease X. And disease X is coming from Twitter. They've already set the stage. That's why they had the monkeypox released on 8/14, the same day Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn, the same day the 90-foot tall monkey god sculpture is erected in Houston, the same day 1 million video gamers are playing Black Myth concurrently as the monkey god. And then you have the Monkey Man movie coming out on 3/11 with Jordan Peele of Nope. We've talked about this. The monkey rage virus thing has been huge recently, and it's all going to be disease X. And disease X is when they're going to tell the public, this meme is so destructive to society, this clip of video, that we're going to have to censor. And there's a precedent for it. Look what they did after Christchurch. Shout out to PewDiePie. They shut down 4chan. They shut down BitChute for a while. And they were going after people legally for sharing the video of the simulated mass shootings. So they already have a precedent for doing this. They were quarantining the internet, chasing down that mind virus, that video clip. But they're getting ready to do this on a much bigger scale. So I brought up the movie that Jordan Peele was a producer on, Monkey Man, came out on 3/11. So that immediately signifies mind virus, 3/11 pandemic date. But what's more, Jordan Peele did Nope. And Nope is the one that has the raging chimpanzee killing people. But what's more interesting about this is that Nope was inspired by the George Floyd footage, the spectacle. It says here, Jordan was influenced to write the movie Nope during 2020. And he explains that it was that footage that made him do it. So what does that mean? It means that the image of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd was such an incitement that it triggered this domino effect and the waves of violence that we saw after. A mind virus, a rage virus. That's the connection. So what we're being prepared for is some kind of event that justifies in the minds of the public the shutting down of the internet to prevent the spread of this particular meme or image. What is it going to be? I thought the Trump thing, but who knows? I thought it might also just be ideology. They'll say, look, the domestic violent extremists were radicalized by Russia, and they worked with them, and they detonated a bomb, and now we're all suffering. And that holds water, because I've been saying for some time that the domestic violent extremists in America associated with McVeigh and 6/11 and all these same symbols and codes, I said that they're going to get the nuke, but it's going to come from Russia. Well, what just happened? We have the new Russiagate, where all these right-wing influencers are suddenly being accused of being funded by Russia. DOJ alleges Russia funded U.S. media company. Now, to reiterate from yesterday, to recap, the company is called Tenet. Tenet happens to be the name of a Christopher Nolan movie. You know, Oppenheimer? So Christopher Nolan, the one who's going to fake the nuke that we're all going to see, did Tenet. Tenet also has an opening scene in this auditorium. There's like this orchestra playing, and these terrorists attack, which is predictive programming for what? The Crocus movie theater, or the Crocus amphitheater, where you had the mass shooting in Russia last year. So you have these themes here: Russia, Tenet, right wing, nuke. It's all there from the same people. Busy56 says, Nope is interesting. Jupe talks a lot about the incident on the set of the monkey attacking everyone. One character asks about it and says, have you seen the SNL sketch of it? It's all there. If it's a sketch on SNL, it must be real. Fascinating. Yeah, that movie's deep. If you haven't seen Nope, it's interesting. I won't offer any spoilers because it's actually that good. I would not have connected it with 2020 because it's about a UFO. But the director specifically mentions the meaning of it all. And Jordan Peele is one of those we'd consider to be a meta-scripter. His movies are intertwined with the PSYOP entertainment complex. Another point here, Jordan Peele is likely the director of the death of Jordan Neal on the subway at the hands of Daniel Penny. And this was unearthed by Synchromorpheus. We talked about this quite a bit at the time, but the synopsis is simply that the death of Jordan Neely, who was going crazy on a subway, became this big controversy. And there were so many elements to this that came out of this Jordan Peele movie, Get Out. So Get Out has this character that looks like the Strangler, Daniel Penny, who's a lacrosse player. Well, Daniel Penny is a lacrosse player. You had connections also between one of the main characters in Nope, the cameraman who films the UFO, to the cameraman who filmed the death of Jordan Neal. But it gets a little deeper when you're looking at this story because Get Out happened to be a catchphrase on the right wing for about a year, referencing subways. Every right-winger, Jack Posobiec, Stu Peters, Lauren Witzke, this whole cadre of nasties were constantly posting videos of people on subways being harassed, and they would say, get out of the cities, get out of the cities. And I said, this is some kind of a meme, get out. And it's part of the right-wing quarantine from Democrat cities. But also, it's the symbol of the subway. In the Joker movie, it's the subway where he shoots the rich guys. Kill the rich is the underlying theme. The subway represents the underclass and the possibility of this communist uprising. That's why the right wing is being triggered with fear of the subways. That's why they saw Daniel Penny as a hero. In fact, right before it happened, Marjorie Taylor Greene had compared the subways in New York to Gotham, and then she said Daniel Penny was a hero. Daniel Penny made more money off of Give, Send, Go than anyone else had ever made. Give, Send, Go is like the right-wing GoFundMe, where they pay their actors. Daniel Penny's legal defense fund is at $3 million right now because he was supported by Kid Rock and all kinds of right-wingers who see him as a hero for essentially doing what Derek Chauvin did. And if you look at it, it's not justified. I mean, the whole thing is meant to generate outrage, for sure. But my suggestion here is that Jordan Peele directed the staged death of Jordan Neely. One other thing, the name Neely. Well, think about that. The name Neely. Very Neely, as in kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, the symbol of kneeling being associated with Black Lives Matter all of 2020. The kneeling during the national anthem. Kneeling has some very special significance, but he was killed on May Day, May 1st, 2023, which is International Workers' Day. It's a communist holiday. Not coincidental, because the Joker movie, Kill the Rich, is basically Marxist class warfare. That's what Joker represents, the underclass, the mentally ill who are underserved. In fact, I talked about this last night. This Colt Gray was begging for mental health. He didn't get it. The same story was said of the Prophet of Doom, Frank James, who shot up the subway. Do you remember right before the Batman movie came out, you had Frank James called the Prophet of Doom online, a Riddler-esque character threatening the mayor just like the Riddler did? But he was complaining about a lack of adequate care for the mentally ill. Same thing with Colt Gray, same thing with the Joker. So one of the themes here has been the underclass, the underserved, the victims of the capitalist society ganging up and eating the rich. That's the fear that's being tapped on when you see get out, the phrase get out. Get out of the cities. Okay, let me scroll through my notes here. I want to see if there's anything else that we have missed. We talked about Shaquille O'Neal losing $20 million. It's a pretty big deal. Colt Gray's obsession with the Parkland massacre. A couple of notes on Parkland. He was obsessed with Lanza and Patrick Cruz, Nick Cruz from Parkland. After Parkland, you had Patrick Crusius in El Paso, mad at open borders. So the name Cruz, Crusius, all tied in to the Children's Crusade, which is what they called March for Our Lives. March for Our Lives was originally called a Children's Crusade. The idea was that the children were too young to vote away the gun laws, and they were victims of these guns. So they had to abandon their parents and march for their lives. Anyway, a couple of things here. Georgia shooter, obsessed with Parkland. So the Parkland shooter, Nick Cruz, was in the news around July of 2022. And on July 4th, you had Robert Crimo shooting up the 4th of July parade. That was the Highland Park shooter. So we had concurrently Parkland High, Highland Park. And this got me thinking, okay, what's the connection here? The Highland Park shooter was obsessed with Lee Harvey Oswald. And that's when I said that Oswald is now back on the world stage. And he had been haunting Trump rallies. So it's not hard to put this together. The guy who was going to snipe a 4th of July parade with the number 47 tattooed on the right side of his head, where Trump has the 47 on his head, shoots up a parade, obsessed with Oswald. Not hard to read the script here. Highland Park, Parkland High. Well, it turns out JFK was taken to Parkland Hospital. So there's a lot of code here with Parkland High, Highland Park, Parkland Hospital, all of it tying in a rather direct way to the shooting of Trump. Because this guy, again, as we talked about, has some connections. The right side of his face smeared with blood. The deer shooting we mentioned just a few minutes ago, and its connections to other references to the Trump shooting predictive programming. Okay, now here's what I want to bring up. The adults around him failed him. Georgia shooting suspect's aunt said he begged for mental health help. Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker and the Riddler were both neglected and mistreated by society that created the mental illness. So their mental illness is really just a symptom of the oppressive society in which they were born, the not fair system. The wealth needs to be redistributed. Famously, one of the scenes is Heath Ledger as Joker burning a pyramid of money. And he says, here it is, Joker burns the money. And this is all code. He says that that Gotham deserves a better class of criminal. They're not doing it for the money. So burning a pyramid of money, saying that they deserve a better class of criminal. Well, communists, and I'm using the phrase, lowercase c, they're not in it for the money. It's not about the money in that sense.
I'm only burning my half. All you care about is money. This town deserves a better class of criminal.
All you care about is money. There is the burning pyramid behind him. This town deserves a better class of criminal. That's a reference to class warfare. And then in Joker, throughout the movie, you see the newspaper, and you consistently see kill the rich. And I have another point here, too. Look, kill the rich, the Joker mask. The newspaper says kill the rich on the front page. But what's more, Maxwell Azrello, who set himself on fire in front of the Trump courthouse, did so on 4/19, which is the date of the Waco incineration. So he sets himself on fire, Burning Man. He burned like Branch Davidian Dave Koresh, who was 33. This was also on the anniversary that Timothy McVeigh blew up the building in Oklahoma City, 4/19. So you have this Burning Man symbolism. Well, Maxwell Azrello, we compared him to Joker. The name Azrello is a comic book writer from DC Comics, ties into this as well. Look, kill the rich, a new movement. But there's another link here with this Maxwell Azrello burning himself on 4/19 outside this Trump event. Let me see if I can pull this up really quick so you know who we're talking about. Okay, here he is. So in one of the photos of him, the main ones you see, he's got his one eye covered. But in another one, he's hanging out with Newt Gingrich, of all people. So he actually had pictures, I think, even with Bill Clinton. But in one of the images, you see he's wearing this Bernie Sanders shirt that says, "Eat the rich." Of course, Bernie Sanders, class warfare, communist rhetoric, redistribution of wealth. The rich are bad people. But again, eat the rich, kill the rich. This is Joker sentiment here. All right, let me go through your comments. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. Kevin Mooring says, Trump being sentenced after the election blows Loomer's prediction for why the National Guard are out. Whenever people talk about the National Guard and it means something, they're likely looking at their 2-week annual drills. The weekend warriors have to get together and hang out and test out their equipment, preventive maintenance, checks and services, boring stuff, moving things around, and it looks like a lot is happening. Sort of like you have all these people on Twitter talking about how the Hells Angels are going to defeat the Venezuelan gang members so they don't take the jobs of American gangs. No, the Hells Angels have nothing to do with this. There's a motorcycle rally in Durango, Colorado. Hells Angels were never headed to Aurora. So many people live in this community-generated fan fiction, which is a combination of tweets and rumors. Everything just being mindlessly repeated. And why? Well, it's because you have people like Donnie Darkened. You have these shills who are paying for engagement. They're paying for bots. They're fabricating interest so they can get clicks. It's all clickbait trutherism. They put clicks in front of facts all the time. It's pathetic. Anybody that has truth in their name is a little suspect. I hate to say it. If your channel has truth in the name, I'm looking sideways. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. It's like saying woke. Oh, I'm a woke channel. Oh, cool, you're awake? No, it means that you have a very specific ideology and you have a very specific frame of reference and you've got an enemy, a big enemy at the top of this thing. And it goes for both sides. Messianic Charlatan said, in the real historical children's crusade, those dumbass kids crusading all got kidnapped and sold to Muslim slavers. Fascinating. Probably intentional. And it is interesting to consider how the modern children's crusade does consist of a bunch of recently graduated high school, recently registered voters just out of high school, and they're being enslaved in a sense. I mean, they're being immersed in mind control. They're targeted with hyper-realistic school shooting drills, the duck and cover of the day. They have Stockholm Syndrome, bonded with Big Brother. They're scared of a guy with a MAGA hat and a gun, but they're not scared of black-clad SWAT officers kicking down their doors and rushing them out of the classrooms, telling them, put your hands up, put your phones down, get out of the classroom. Like, no, that's salvation to them. That's Stockholm Syndrome. They have fallen in love with their captors. Kevin Mooring says, Tim, there is an Illuminati card, Eat the Rich. Okay, I see it on eBay. It's extremely rare. Looks like something Marina Abramovich would serve at a birthday party. It's got a man on a table with an apple in his mouth. Carefully orchestrating the... This one's blurry. Let me find a bit. I want to see what it actually says. There's always clues. You know, Kamala Harris said, what happened to anytime, anywhere? Referring to Trump and the debates. But that's actually a phrase on the Illuminati sniper card. It says, carefully orchestrating the media, you create an insane groundswell of anger, blaming the wealthy and powerful for anything. This card may be played by any media group which makes an attack to destroy against a group with a power of 6 or more. Goes on to say, it gives an extra 10 to that attack and makes it privileged. I'm convinced the Illuminati sit around playing the Illuminati playing card game. And this is a card that could be in play. In fact, you know the guy, Maxwell Zrello, set himself on fire next to a hot dog stand? And you had CNN there saying that they could smell the flesh cooking. I was like, it might have been the hot dogs. No way that was a coincidence that they would have all those things put there together. And if I smell burning flesh and, I'm in no way capable of rendering aid, like, I'm not going to sit there and inhale it. But these people at CNN were just sitting around while Maxwell's burning, talking about the scent. They all said it. And I think it's because it was scripted. Okay, moving on your comments here. Isabel says, McVeigh was sentenced to death on 8/14, the date of the monkeypox declaration by the WHO. Again, the monkeypox declaration coincides with the other monkey god connections, but all of it seems to tie into the rage virus. Planet of the Apes just came out. There's so many references we have here. But that would be consistent because we're specifically talking about right-wing rage. And McVeigh, again, was executed on 6/11/2001, 90 days before 9/11. But 6/11 is the time Trump was shot. 6/11 is the time that the shooter's father was arrested. 6/11 is a key number in the Sound of Freedom, a QAnon movie targeted at the right wing. Trump had a private viewing of that movie in Bedminster, where he sat down next to Jim Caviezel, who died and came back to life during the filming of Passion of the Christ. And they watched it together. They watched Sound of Freedom, all about this Bible verse, Tim 6:11, which you would think, is that Timothy McVeigh 6:11? Interesting connection, not a coincidence. But yeah, if you didn't know, Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus on Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, was 33 at the time. And on the 5th take of Sermon on the Mount, he was struck by lightning and he died. And they brought him back, thankfully. So now we have Sound of Freedom. It seems like they almost don't even have to put any, they didn't used to have to put any effort into their psyops. Like, yeah, we just say that it happened and it happened. It's like, why don't you just release the footage? This is reported last year, July 6th. Passion of the Christ star Jim Caviezel was struck by lightning during the last shot of the movie. Now 54. He was also hit on the head with a cross weighing 150 pounds. I believe that one. He acts like it. Jim Caviezel on being struck by lightning. He recently confirmed it. Like, you would think they would release the footage. You know, he's playing Jesus and he dies and he comes back from the dead. Like, isn't that something?
Happy Easter. Did you know that lightning struck people on the set of The Passion of the Christ not once, but twice? I mean, is there a wilder headline than this? Jesus actor struck by lightning. That's right, Jim Caviezel himself was hit by lightning while portraying Jesus' final hours. The first lightning strike happened while the crew was shooting in Matera, Italy. Per the BBC, key set PA Jan Michelini suffered light burns to his fingers after lightning hit his umbrella. But what's that thing about lightning never striking twice? Because months later, when the production moved to a remote area outside of Rome, Jim Caviezel was standing under an umbrella, again with Michelini, when both of them were struck by lightning. As producer Steve McKivity told Variety in 2003.
Anyway, Pixar didn't happen. Slick Rick says, Sean Penn wearing a Colt 45. I see it here, Colt 45 shirt. Interesting. Yeah, the name Colt is highly significant, again, as caller commented on. There's some significances there to the name Colt. But also, Colt 45 ties Elvis into the story. He gave Nixon a Colt 45. And then, of course, the blood on the side of the kid's face that he put there on Elvis's birthday. Fascinating connections here. Again, Colt 45, and let me bring this up. There's this shot glass, and Trump's a teetotaler. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. So why the hell was he selling at his bar in Trump Tower called 45 and Whiskey? Why is he selling a shot glass that has a bullet hole in it, a bullet in it, and his signature? Trump's signature 45. So this is a shot glass. Like, what do you call this? Like, it makes zero sense. I mean, I get it. It's a pun, a shot glass, and a shot. But again, Trump doesn't drink. So why did he endorse this? Why was he selling this for years? Well, now we know why. It's part of the body of predictive programming for his role and the psyop that would come to define it. They Lie We See says, greetings, Blue Wrench Lodge. Yep, thank you for joining, and thanks to Violet, we have many, many more members. If you want to get in on the Discord, go to ips.monster. I'll go ahead and show you, just so there's no confusion. Go to ips.monster. Scroll down, and it has Parallel Community on X, has Discord server, Gilded. So you just click on this, and it'll take you straight to the server. Also, I have links to the archives on Odyssey, Podcast Addict, BitChute. We're on iTunes, TuneIn, Audible, iHeartRadio, Player FM, and Spotify. You can find all those links and more. And we also have a line of products on Amazon. So if you click the link there as well, you'll see we have the book, Autohoaxology 101, World Stage Deprogramming Guide, and more. But yeah, it's all there. I created a hub. So go to ips.monster. And you can also pick up tickets for the Zoom or in person if you're close for AutoHoaxCon #1 happening on the 28th. And it has to happen. We have to be the first ones to do this. There has never been a conference predicated on the world stage construct being this PSYOP enhanced false model. You have conspiracy theorist conferences all the time, but they don't have the overview. They don't see the big picture. They see the PSYOPs, but they don't see the PSY-war. They are confused all the time. An event happens and like, well, is it real or is it fake? Let's wait and see. If that's your attitude, if that's your approach, you're actually confused. You should already know that when it is an extraordinary event and it fits a certain template, you can go ahead and safely shift the burden of proof back. And we have not been contradicted once. There has not been any kind of situation where we've looked at some event, deconstructed the thing, and then later said, oh, look, we were wrong. We have been right. They Lie We See says, why no second edition of, oh yeah, Secret Religion? I have to order copies of it. I want to sell it directly through the store. I'm trying to get it off of Amazon. I don't own the first edition. I was swindled, you could say. It was a really bad deal. I should have seen it coming. I was talking about starting a publishing company to do science fiction without the presupposition of a heliocentric model. And as we were developing content for this and I was kicking off this publishing company, someone approached me with an offer. And they said that they would pay me a certain amount to oversee the production of all these books, but they wanted to basically, be an owner. So I turned over about 12 ebooks that I had on Amazon that were mostly paying my rent from royalties in exchange for what would have been a business relationship where I would be paid to produce a lot of content. Well, that burned out after a few months. And so I basically lost custody of a whole lot of royalties. And the person who made the deal with me had a split with his then girlfriend who kind of absconded with everything. And one time I managed to contact her and she sent me a check, but she retains the rights. So I don't promote a lot of these books because, again, and what was crazy about it was as soon as I agreed to this deal and I started producing the books, they changed everything. They said, we don't want to do anything flat earth. we want to do more of a vintage 1950s science fiction catalog, which obviously I wouldn't be into. So it was just sort of a really bad arrangement. So my point of it is I do not promote Secret Religion of the Elite or any of these because I don't, that money's going to the enemy or somebody who is making some pretty bold claims. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I have some ideas that it might have been a deliberate act of sabotage. Last night we were talking about gang stalking. And yeah, I think there's some elements to that here. Esteban says, Illuminati card game added to the Think Tank chat. Thank you. Oh, okay, good, good. Okay, but I'm done with conspiracy theorists anyway. Like we were gonna do we were gonna do Conspiracy Radio Network or Conspiratainment. I'm not here for Conspiratainment. I'm not here for confused people. People who don't know what's real and what's fake. Like you have the general public who don't know about the fakery, and then you have those who are aware of fakery, but they're still 1 foot in the matrix, 1 foot out. They're confused. They're scared. A lot of times they're bigoted because these conspiracy theories lead you down certain trails so that at the end of it, you're hyper-focused on one ethnic group or one explanation that leads you to a certain set of values that is really contrary to what we're engaged with here, which is more philosophical. Like, I don't believe in white genocide. I'm not worried like Nick Fuentes. He's like, oh, we got to go make babies now. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And you have to get out from underneath this big tent of Trutherville, where all the conspiracy theorists, and that's just a label to those who don't trust the news. So you have enough sense to ditch the mainstream news, but now you're in this big tent with all these people with a bunch of crazy belief systems that are contrary to what the mainstream believes, but they're no closer to the truth. And I've been working really hard on breaking away from that because these people are just, they're stuck in the mud. You may not believe in the mud flood theory, but Trutherville was hit by a mud flood. Some kind of soil liquefaction. They're literally stuck. And you think the sea of irrelevance is bad. They've been entirely mud flooded. And it's a bad place to be anyway, because it's consensus based. And I'm not here for the consensus. If I cared about pleasing the consensus, I'd still be hyping chemtrails for fear of contradicting the chemtrail lobby. And you have a lot of big truther channels who act like they're beholden to different groups. Oh, like I can't displease the QAnon lobby or the Trumpers or the chemtrailers. I don't want to offend the Manduzlers. It's like, okay, so if you're going to try to please the consensus, then you're adopting the hive mind that they want you to. They want you to kneel before the monolith. What is the monolith? It's the unifying world view, what everybody agrees on. And it's like, well, I don't agree with it. And I'm not going against the grain in a contrived, reactionary, knee-jerk fashion like Trutherville is. Quite the contrary. We're not going against it. We're stepping out of it. There's a big difference. Okay, moving on. Obreek says, truthers like stories as much as normies. Well, the normies like their dream world. Truthers love their nightmare world. Yeah, Quays, Manduzel has to do with Mandela effects. So here's the issue with Mandela effects. And it's very simple. To believe in a Mandela effect means that you're still falling for certain logical fallacies and you're still being manipulated by people who now know how to create false memories. False memories are a thing. And the Mandela effect will say there's no such thing as a false memory. My memories are all perfect. Well, no, they're not. That's not how memory works, one. And two, false memories are routinely created. It's actually kind of a science. And if you look at the Innocence Project and how many people have been convicted over faulty eyewitness testimony, it tells you something about eyewitness testimony, how malleable it is, and that the interference the retroactive interference involved in interrogating somebody and asking leading questions can cause them to confuse imaginings that were prompted with actual memories. The Mandela effect is created by the people asking the questions. It's actually that simple. It's a gaslighting game. But it fools a lot of people. And if you can be fooled by that, well, then you're not a skeptic, is my point. Like, you don't make the cut. You don't get to exit Trutherville if you're non-skeptical. Non-skeptical media is both mainstream and alternative. Skeptical media means fake until proven real, auto-hoaxing it all, left and right. Truthers are only skeptical against the other side, the mainstream. They're just such a box. It's easy to see that they're in a box. Their perspective is limited because they do not include special effects. Slick Rick says, I always get blank stares from normies. Yeah, I have a approach here that is essentially ignore them, don't try to wake them up, and if anything, distance yourself from the truthers. What we're doing is we are segregating. We're actually separating. We are quarantining by design. We have to split from anybody who falls into any of these traps, anyone centered around belief systems. And I have to say that includes critical race theory. If you think that the West is the devil and it's oppressing the world, whites are evil, critical race theory, yeah, obviously you're stuck in the political horseshoe. You have no place in skeptical media analysis. This also pertains to critical Jew theory, those who say the Jews control everything. I'm sorry, but that's still in the political horseshoe. If you're in that political horseshoe, you're non-skeptical. You can't prove me wrong on this. I mean, that's a non-skeptical position. It takes for granted way too much, including the overconfidence many have in their own conclusions. Like, I know who runs the world. I can prove it. No, you don't. Until 10 years ago, you didn't know that 9/11 was just a movie superimposed onto the news cycle, enhanced with actors on the ground. We don't have enough information to know it all. We certainly didn't 20 years ago. We have better information now than we did then, but we don't have enough. So anyone who has a complete model of the Earth, like, oh, I believe it's this, I think the model's premature. Whether you think it's round or flat, it's premature. Anyone who thinks they know who runs the world, prove it. But if you're going off of stinky red herrings planted by controlled opposition agents, like, we don't have a place for that here. Angst G says, don't wake the sleepwalkers, it's dangerous. Well, it's very useful to understand their language, however. And that's why I think it's useful to look at this as compartmentalization. So broadly speaking, everyone's in the MSM box, the mainstream mediation. And mainstream mediation comes from all sources, all platforms, movies, books, education, government, rather politicians, all the soap opera of the day that comes from celebrities and politicians. It's all included in the same mediation. So we're all put in the same big box, but then within the box, which is broadly speaking Normieville, the complacently programmed, then you have those who are not complacent. And if you're not complacent and you lean left and you don't become a skeptic, you're going to go woke. If you're leaning right, you're going to go to Trutherville. And by not skeptic, I mean if you haven't rejected the media at face value, the mediation itself. And you can't name any popular influencers who do this. They all exist in the world where every single news event is real. They disagree on why it happened or who's to blame, but there's no disagreement on the essential reality of it. So they're playing in this, what is called an alternate reality game. It's useful to look at it as a cult in many ways, and it is a doomsday cult. But the reason for understanding these different boxes is so that you're talking to a normie. Well, you know they're not going to understand anything outside of their box, so you can avoid going outside of their experience. Same goes for truthers or wokesters. Okay, phones are open. 505-510-4226. Portal says newsbenders run the world. Yeah, they do. Newsbenders and liars. Jessica says Trump told the truth with fake news. No, Trump told... Trump actually destroyed the term fake news. Because now it just means liberal bias. He took it from the perspective of off-world stage, it's a construct, to those guys are lying about me. But in no way did Trump unveil anything about the true nature of things. I mean, look, Space Force. What do you think Space Force is? Space Force is consolidating all the satellites from all the military, but Space Force is ultimately about mind control. Because outer space and the space program is about world view control. They show you the world that you're in. And outer space is a metaphor for the space between your ears. It's a commons. Just as outer space is a commons and cyberspace is a commons, they want the space between your ears to be adapted to a commonly accepted consensus model. And Trump did nothing to disrupt that. Obrique says Joker 2 releases soon. Yeah, Joker 2 is going to come out on 10/4. I'm looking forward to it for a few reasons. I need to finish watching Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix. I think it's going to be predictive in some way. Joker 2 is actually being filmed out... Because I mentioned the Joker connections with the Trump trial. And think about it. Maxwell's Rello, Joker connections, sets himself on fire. You have Robert De Niro in the Joker movie outside the courthouse. And you go back to when Trump was arrested on 4/4/2023. They were filming Joker 2 outside of the courthouse. And that on 4/4, that was actually Heath Ledger's 44th birthday. So Joker 2, 4/4. Well, 4 is a cross, so 4/4 is a double cross. Joker 2, J2, like Jesus coming back second time. 2 crosses. Joker has Joaquin Phoenix. The name Phoenix. Phoenix was a symbol associated with Christ very early on. The resurrection symbol. But Joaquin Phoenix is the second coming of Joker in that sense. So there's a lot of second coming, double cross symbolism attached to this. So I'm looking forward to Joker 2 for that reason. Obrique says the layers are endless. Peter W. says I've been watching Preacher. I want to watch Preacher. I had checked out some of the graphic novels, and I was downtown, and I saw an overturned red sports car, and I was told, I had to back off. It was part of a movie set. They were filming The Preacher. So I saw a Preacher set. Ted Stryker says, I think Tim needs to talk with Ryan Gable from The Secret Teachings. Certainly. I've always been interested in this, and I've been somewhat symbol literate for a long time, and I never paid attention to the news. I just kind of avoided it. But then when I did, I arrived at the conclusion many did, that obviously there's some high-level wizardry going on behind the scenes. Okay, we talked about Tim Pool getting $100,000 a week to push propaganda. We talked about the rage virus and the strange Trump connections. Colt's cheeks streaked with blood. This is on 1/8 after he shoots the deer. The deer hunter connecting to the deer hunter, Robert De Niro, who was screaming out in front of the Trump White House, and Robert De Niro in multiple roles foreshadows the shooting of Trump. The deer also a reference to Ohio Buckeye, as the caller pointed out. But yeah, they really made a point to show him here with blood on the right side of his face. That is an interesting and notable connection. We talked about the Boeing Starliner spacecraft landing here in New Mexico. It didn't hit anybody's house, thankfully. I was worried about it. And if you're not worried about space junk, you don't believe the science. What are you, a flat earther? The only people who can be excused for not wearing helmets are flat earthers. Everyone else, you have no excuse. Like, what, you don't trust NASA? You don't trust the science? Not wearing a space junk helmet is like not wearing a mask. It's arrogant. It's selfish. It's science denialism. It's flat earthism, basically. If you're not wearing a helmet, I'm just going to assume you're a flat earther, not trusting the science. Anyway, here's another article or a video clip. I have to play this just to show you how there's this general consensus coming out among right-wing and religious types that aliens are demons. Here's another one. This individual saying that the aliens aren't coming from outer space, but they're coming from below your house.
That they actually look more human with reptilian skin, but humanoid. They're hybrids. They mixed it in a lab. Come on now. Okay, so it's not from another planet. And they don't even look like you think they look. So who's in charge of that? So this is the things that I've never talked about before. I probably never will again, but thank you for coming. But this is the thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the book of Revelation. These things are going to come out of the earth. They didn't come on spaceships. These are interdimensional beings. And those who have enough sodium pentothal in their system, when I ask them, will tell me the truth, no matter what agency they work for. They will tell me the truth, and that is they're interdimensional.
So he's putting truth serum into people's drinks and getting the truth out of them. And these aliens are coming from beneath your house.
Not letting them be exposed yet. They're coming from below your house.
Something to look forward to. Aliens coming from beneath your house. They're demons. They've made deals with the Democrats. And when the aliens arrive, the Democrats are going to say, beam me up, evolve us. That's how they see them, as future humans, perfected. And again, they're called grays for a reason. Grays, it all ties in to the dialectic, the polarities. The Hegelian dialectics, black and white becomes what? Gray. The ultimate success of their dialectics is represented by the alien invasion, when they have reached the synthesis. And ultimately what I think it means, this alien invasion, it represents the dissolution of all borders. Not aliens from another planet, but the ubiquitous illegal alien invasion, which is, I think, one of the reasons why they conflate the two. And in one paragraph, Tucker Carlson will tell you, be afraid of the illegal aliens and be afraid of the extraterrestrial demons, the aliens from outer space. These are obviously partisan takes as well. We talked about Laura Loomer eating dog food. Nobody was surprised. Okay, well, I want to say thanks, everyone, for your comments, as always. Sign up for the newsletter, ips.monster. You can get into the Discord server there. Kevin Mooring says, Tyler Swift PSYOP still going. That was fake, by the way. There was this rumor, or rather there was this AI-generated image of a contract suggesting that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were going to break up because it had expired. But it turns out that that was fake and somebody's being sued over it. So it might be fake. I'm not sure. I have to look into it again. I haven't been keeping up with my Taylor Swift news. Not since we put a moratorium on any mentions. Anyway, this has been Infinite Plane Saturnday. I'll put a link below so you can sign up for the archives, newsletters, live stream notifications, and so you can get into the Discord research facility. And Gilded. This is Saturn X by Fepet.